Off the coast of Belize sits a perfect circle of dark blue water, nearly 1,000 feet across and over 400 feet deep, visible clearly from space. For decades, nobody knew exactly what was waiting at the bottom, because it was simply too deep for ordinary divers to safely reach. In December 2018, a team finally sent submersibles down to find out. What came back included a wall of stone that shouldn't exist underwater, a toxic layer no living thing can cross, and the bodies of two men who had been missing for years. This is the Great Blue Hole, the world's largest marine sinkhole, sitting roughly 60 miles off the coast of Belize within the Lighthouse Reef Atoll. It measures nearly 300 meters across and around 125 meters deep, a near-perfect dark circle set against the turquoise Caribbean around it, famous enough to be visible in satellite photographs, and a genuine bucket list dive site for scuba divers worldwide. The hole sits at the center of a large coral atoll, and from directly above, the contrast is genuinely striking. A wide ring of shallow, pale turquoise reef water surrounding an almost perfectly circular pool of much darker, deeper blue. A visual signature, distinctive enough that a NASA scientist once described it as the deepest, most vivid blue hole imaginable. But most of that fame comes from its surface. Its true depths remained functionally unmapped until a dedicated expedition in December 2018 finally sent submersibles deep enough to properly explore it for the first time. That gap between global fame and genuine scientific understanding is itself worth noting. Millions of people have seen photographs of the Great Blue Hole and thousands have dived its upper reaches, yet for nearly 5 decades after it first drew international attention, almost nobody had actually seen what its lower two-thirds actually contained, leaving the site simultaneously one of the most recognized and least explored natural landmarks on the planet. What that expedition found didn't just satisfy curiosity. It rewrote basic assumptions about the hole's history, revealed a genuinely hostile zone partway down that nothing alive can survive passing through, and uncovered a sobering human tragedy that had been sitting undiscovered at the bottom for years. Let's start with why this specific expedition mattered so much, because the Blue Hole had already been famous for decades before anyone actually reached its floor. That expedition cemented the Blue Hole's reputation among the diving community for decades afterward, drawing enthusiasts from around the world eager to descend into its striking, deep blue waters and explore the accessible upper section of what was already understood to be a genuinely unusual geological formation. But scuba diving has hard physical limits, and the Blue Hole's true depth, well beyond 200 feet, sits far past what standard diving equipment can safely reach. For nearly 50 years after Cousteau's visit, most of what existed below roughly 130 feet remained essentially unmapped, described only in fragments by the small number of technical divers willing to attempt it, using specialized mixed gas equipment and accepting genuinely serious risk for a comparatively brief window of exploration time, before decompression requirements forced a return to the surface. The hole's true, lower reaches, in other words, had spent nearly half a century being one of the most photographed yet least physically explored major natural features anywhere in the ocean. In December 2018, an expedition organized by Aquatica Submarines, backed by Virgin's Richard Branson, and joined by Fabien Cousteau, Jacques Cousteau's own grandson and an accomplished oceanographer in his own right, set out to finally map the entire structure properly. Over roughly 3 weeks, from late November into mid-December, the team conducted more than 20 separate dives using 2 specialized submersibles, including the Aquatica Stingray 500, capable of reaching depths and durations standard scuba gear simply can't match, alongside sonar equipment provided by Kongsberg Mesotech, mounted both on the surface vessel and the submersibles themselves. Their goal was straightforward: produce the first complete 3-dimensional sonar map of the hole's interior, while documenting whatever physical features and life they encountered along the way. The scale of the technical undertaking involved is worth appreciating on its own terms. The Great Blue Hole's depth and near-vertical walls place most of its interior well beyond the reach of conventional scuba equipment, which is generally limited to roughly 130 feet before the physiological risks of nitrogen, narcosis, and decompression sickness become prohibitively dangerous for all but the most specialized technical divers. The submersibles deployed in 2018, including a second vehicle called Idabel operated by the Roatan Institute for Deep Sea Exploration, were specifically built to remain submerged for up to 12 hours at a time and reach depths of up to 3,000 feet, giving the team the sustained access needed to properly survey a formation that had defeated casual exploration for nearly 5 decades. The expedition's live broadcast, aired on the Discovery Channel on December 2nd, 2018, marked the first time footage from the genuine bottom of the Blue Hole had been shown to a global audience in real time. Coordinating a mission of this complexity required careful logistical planning beyond simply lowering vehicles into the water. The research vessel, Brooks McCall, served as the expedition's surface platform, hosting both the sonar processing equipment and the support teams responsible for monitoring each submersible systems throughout every dive. Positioning accuracy mattered enormously for the sonar mapping effort specifically. since building a reliable three-dimensional model of the hole's interior required precisely tracking where each sonar reading was taken relative to a fixed reference point. Highlights achieved using specialized positioning receivers mounted on tripods lowered to the seafloor ahead of each mapping run. That level of technical care, invisible to anyone simply watching the resulting footage, is part of what allowed the expedition's sonar map to hold up as a genuinely reliable scientific resource, rather than a rough visual approximation. The first major discovery came almost immediately, and it fundamentally changed how researchers understood the blue hole's origin. Roughly 400 feet down, the team encountered a dense wall of stalactites, the icicle-shaped mineral formations that only form in dry, air-filled caves through the slow dripping of mineral-rich water, a process that cannot occur underwater at all. Finding stalactites this deep confirmed something researchers had suspected but never directly verified. The Great Blue Hole wasn't always a sinkhole beneath the ocean. It began as a limestone cave system on dry land, most likely during the last ice age, when global sea levels sat dramatically lower than they do today. As the ice age ended and massive volumes of glacial ice melted, sea levels rose by roughly 300 feet over a relatively short span of geological time, eventually flooding the cave system entirely and causing its ceiling to collapse, leaving behind the deep, roughly circular void divers and submersibles explored today. The specific angle at which the recovered stalactites now sit adds a further layer to that story. Rather than hanging perfectly vertical the way they would have formed originally in a dry cave, many of the formations documented by the expedition are noticeably tilted, evidence that at some point after the ceiling's initial collapse, sections of the cave system shifted or partially caved in further, reorienting formations that had spent thousands of years growing straight down under ordinary gravity. Reading that tilt alongside the surrounding rock layers gives geologists a rough timeline of the site's collapse sequence, distinct phases of structural failure separated by enough time for stalactite growth to resume in between, rather than a single instantaneous event. Richard Branson, reflecting on the discovery afterward, described the exposed rock layer where the transition from cave to flooded sinkhole was visible as one of the starkest physical reminders he'd personally encountered of how quickly and dramatically sea levels can rise given the right conditions, a detail that connects a purely geological curiosity directly to present-day conversations about climate and ice melt. Specifically, Branson noted that, roughly 10,000 years ago, sea levels rose by approximately 300 feet as global ice sheets melted. And at exactly the 300-foot mark inside the blue hole, the submersible cameras captured a visible transition in the rock itself, a physical boundary marking precisely where dry land once ended and open water began. The second major finding involved something the team could measure precisely, but still found genuinely unsettling once they understood its implications. At a depth of roughly 290 feet, the submersibles passed through a distinct layer of hydrogen sulfide, a toxic compound dissolved throughout the water at that specific depth, forming an invisible boundary that effectively separates two completely different worlds within the same hole. Above that layer, the water teemed with reef fish, coral, and the kind of vibrant marine life you'd expect from a healthy Caribbean ecosystem. Below it, there was no oxygen at all and essentially nothing alive. Erica Bergman, the expedition's chief submersible pilot and a National Geographic explorer, explained the underlying mechanism afterward. Anything that falls into the hole and sinks below that hydrogen sulfide boundary begins decomposing, and that decomposition process itself consumes whatever oxygen exists at that depth, until eventually there's none left at all. Once that oxygen is gone, decomposition effectively stops, meaning anything that ends up below roughly 290 feet becomes preserved rather than continuing to decay, sealed inside a genuinely lifeless, toxic layer that almost nothing in the ocean can survive passing through. Bergman described the hydrogen sulfide itself as chemically identical to the flammable, corrosive gas most people associate with the compound, simply dissolved into the water at a lower concentration, still potent enough that marine life instinctively avoids crossing into it at all. That preservation effect is precisely what led the team to their most sobering discovery. Descending through and below the hydrogen sulfide layer, the submersibles located the remains of two divers who had gone missing in the blue hole years earlier, never recovered despite previous search efforts, their bodies preserved by the same oxygen-starved conditions that had halted normal decomposition. The team treated the discovery with appropriate gravity, and information was passed along to the relevant authorities, offering a measure of closure in a case that had remained unresolved for a considerable time. Bergman later described the moment with clear respect for what the team had found, noting simply that the divers appeared to be at peace, resting in the same dark, undisturbed quiet that had settled over that entire lower section of the hole for years before the expedition ever arrived. Alongside that discovery, the team also encountered a stretch of mysterious circular tracks embedded in the sediment roughly 350 feet down, distinct, deliberate-looking marks whose exact origin the team was unable to conclusively identify. Bergman described them afterward as genuinely open to interpretation, careful not to overstate a finding that, unlike the stalactites or the hydrogen sulfide layer, didn't come with an obvious, verifiable explanation attached. Some observers have speculated the tracks could represent old anchor drag marks left by boats moored above the hole over the decades, while others have wondered whether they reflect some kind of natural sediment movement pattern unique to the hole's specific shape and internal currents, but neither explanation has been confirmed, and the expedition team was careful not to present a guess as a settled answer. That kind of honest uncertainty, a real research team documenting something interesting without immediately manufacturing a dramatic explanation for it, is worth noting specifically, because it's precisely the kind of restraint that separates a genuine scientific expedition from the fabricated, mystery-solved claims that circulate constantly around famous sites like this one. The expedition also documented something considerably less mysterious and considerably more troubling. Plastic bottles and other debris resting at the bottom of the hole, a stark, visible reminder that even one of the most remote, difficult-to-reach marine environments on the planet hadn't escaped human waste finding its way in. Branson specifically highlighted this discovery in his own public reflections on the expedition, on using it as a direct argument for reducing single-use plastic consumption, noting the unsettling contrast between a formation that had taken thousands of years of natural geological history to create and the speed with which modern waste had already found its way to the very bottom of it. That detail resonated widely once footage from the expedition became public, in some ways becoming as widely discussed among general audiences as the more purely scientific findings. A reminder that even a genuinely remote natural wonder isn't insulated from the broader footprint of human activity happening far above and around it. Beyond the individual discoveries, the expedition's broader sonar mapping effort produced genuinely useful long-term scientific value. The team identified distinct terraces along the hole's interior walls, layered horizontal shelves that record specific historical sea levels at the time they formed, comparable to terraces documented in other marine blue holes elsewhere in the world. Bergman noted that these terraces show sea level rise historically happening in discrete steps rather than one smooth, continuous climb, a pattern with direct relevance to how researchers model and anticipate future sea level changes as the modern climate continues warming. Each terrace effectively functions as a frozen snapshot of where the ocean's surface once paused for an extended period before rising again, giving researchers a physical, datable record stretching back through multiple past climate transitions, preserved in a single accessible location, rather than scattered across distant, harder-to-reach sites worldwide. That comparative value extends beyond Belize specifically. Bergman noted that identifying terraces matching similar formations in other oceanic blue holes around the world allows researchers to cross-reference sea level histories across widely separated locations, strengthening confidence in the overall pattern rather than relying on any single site's data in isolation. A formation that might otherwise be treated as a purely local curiosity becomes, once compared against similar sites elsewhere, a small but genuine contribution to the much larger global record of how Earth's oceans have risen and fallen across past climate cycles. The Great Blue Hole is far from the only formation of its kind, though it remains among the largest and most famous. Similar sinkhole structures, formed through the same basic combination of ancient dryland cave collapse followed by post-Ice Age flooding, exist scattered across the Bahamas, the South China Sea, and Egypt's Red Sea coast, each one offering its own regional record of past sea level history preserved in stone. The Dean's Blue Hole in the Bahamas, for instance, holds the distinction of being the deepest known blue hole accessible directly from shore, while a formation in the South China Sea, known locally as the Dragon Hole, has been measured even deeper than Belize's. What makes the Great Blue Hole stand out within this broader category isn't necessarily its depth relative to every other example worldwide, but its combination of extreme visibility from the surface, relative accessibility for expeditions, and now, thanks to the 2018 survey, one of the most thoroughly mapped interiors of any blue hole anywhere on Earth. So here's where the honest picture of the Great Blue Hole actually lands, once the full expedition data is considered together rather than reduced to a single dramatic headline. This wasn't a story about an ancient civilization, a hidden monster, or a fabricated AI revelation. It was a genuinely difficult, carefully executed piece of modern ocean exploration, using real submersibles and real sonar technology that confirmed the hole's origin as a collapsed dry land cave system, mapped a genuinely hostile, life-excluding chemical layer partway down, brought long overdue closure to a real human search and recovery case, and left at least one small mystery. Those unexplained sediment tracks, honestly unresolved rather than forcing a dramatic explanation onto it simply because cameras were rolling. That combination, real wonder alongside real tragedy, alongside real patient scientific restraint, is exactly what makes the actual verified story of the Blue Hole's exploration more compelling than any exaggerated version of it could be. Consider how easily this story could have been told differently, with the mysterious tracks reframed as evidence of an unknown creature, or the hydrogen sulfide layer dramatized into some kind of supernatural boundary, the exact pattern that fuels so much fabricated ocean mystery content online. The genuine expedition data didn't need any of that embellishment to be worth telling. A cave that spent thousands of years dry before the ocean swallowed it whole, a chemical layer that quietly halts decomposition itself, and a research team honest enough to say, "We don't know," when they genuinely didn't, together tell a story with more staying power than a manufactured reveal ever could. There's also a broader lesson embedded in how this specific expedition conducted itself. Rather than treating the mission as complete once the cameras stopped rolling and the headlines were written, the team explicitly committed to sharing their full sonar dataset with the Belizean government and the wider global scientific community, framing the 2018 dives as a foundation for future research rather than a one-time spectacle. Bergman noted afterward that no further submersible expeditions to the site were immediately planned, but that other scientific teams might reasonably want to return and examine specific features in greater detail, an open invitation rather than a claim that the hole's mysteries had all been resolved. What's left today is one of the most photographed natural landmarks on Earth, still holding a genuinely toxic, lifeless layer partway down that separates a healthy reef ecosystem above from a preserved, oxygen-starved world below, still hiding at least one detail nobody has fully explained, and still serving, in its own quiet way, as a physical record of exactly how dramatically this planet's sea levels have shifted before, and how quickly they could shift again. The stalactite wall discovered 400 feet down remains exactly where it formed thousands of years before any ocean ever reached it. A silent, tilted record of a time when what is now one of the world's most famous dive sites was simply a dry cave under an open sky. The hydrogen sulfide boundary still sits at its same depth, still invisible to the naked eye, still marking the precise line between a world full of coral and fish and a world with nothing alive in it at all. The human story embedded in this discovery deserves its own closing thought as well. Long before any submersible reached the bottom, two families had spent years without answers about what had happened to people they'd lost in these waters. The same expedition that mapped ancient stalactites and toxic chemical layers also, almost as an unplanned consequence of simply doing thorough scientific work, gave those families something they hadn't had in a long time: a confirmed resting place and an end to open uncertainty. That's easy to lose in a headline built around, what scientists found, but it's arguably the most human part of the entire expedition, and worth remembering, alongside the geology and the chemistry. So we want to ask you directly, if a hole this famous, this photographed, and this frequently visited could still hide unexplained tracks and unresolved mysteries at its bottom, what do you think is still sitting undiscovered in the parts of our oceans nobody's mapped at all? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We read every one of them. If this is the kind of story you want more of, the kind grounded in a real expedition, real instruments, and real honest uncertainty rather than a manufactured reveal, make sure you're subscribed, because next time we're heading somewhere just as remarkable. Until then, stay curious and keep questioning the version of history you were handed.